Maximum Health with your host, Dr. Ken Gray. With over 20 years in healthcare, Dr. Gray is a doctor of Oriental medicine and holistic physician fusing Eastern and Western healing. Dr. Gray is on staff at Jupiter Medical Center and in private practice with an office in Jupiter, Florida, where he resides. Dr. Gray enjoys being a physician as well as being an educator. His unique approach to holistic healing has taken him abroad to lecture in Baden-Baden, Germany, and treat sports professionals in Hawaii and Biarritz, France. He is co-author of several books on food therapy and the founder of the annual Star Summit Talks at the Norton Museum of Art in Palm Beach, Florida. Now it's time for Maximum Health with Dr. Ken Gray.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Maximum Health Radio, Quality Living with yours truly, Dr. Ken Gray. Thank you for joining us. We have with us today Mr. Cody Mott, Senior Scientist, InWater Research Group, Marine Conservation. Thank you for joining us, sir.
I'm glad to be here, Dr. Ken.
Yeah, you've been doing this for a while, let's say since like 2006 or something like that.
Yeah, actually moved to Florida to pursue a career in marine biology, and I've enjoyed it ever since.
And yeah, it's a great place for marine biology because we got a lot of marine. Sorry. We're just surrounded by water here, and it's wonderful. But what made you want to move here and do this?
Well, one, I grew up outside of Pittsburgh, and so obviously there's not a lot of oceans there. But I've always been intrigued by the ocean and marine life ever since I was young, and I had some opportunities to come down here to Florida to study at Florida Atlantic University, and I really fell in love with the environment that surrounds me in the state. Awesome.
What makes InWater research and conservation different than, say, other places in the state?
So one of the things that's unique about our organization is our mission to actually, we're fostering marine conservation, but through integrated research and education. So we really pride ourselves on doing the hard science and research that is necessary to understand the animals that we're studying and the environments that they inhabit, but also taking that and putting it into educational initiatives that reach a variety of audiences, anywhere from K-12 students to after school to adults, ranging from just the general public to fishers to specific groups that may be interested. So we want to take that and really meet those audiences where they're at so that they can understand some of the issues that we're studying and that also affect them.
Gotcha. Of those issues, what are some top ones that are coming to mind right now and that are most intriguing, let's say, to the future of our role, which is the younger population?
Yeah, so some of the big things that we see are that the issues that affect the animals and the nature that we study are also affecting the people that inhabit this state and the entire world. And so some of those big things that we're primarily looking at are pollution, and that goes from microplastics to water pollution are some of the big things that we study there, to things like global climate change and how that affects us now, but how that will affect us throughout the long term.
Which of the marine life do you say gives you the most indicators of this shift?
So for us, we are primarily studying sea turtles. Mm-hmm. That's our bread and butter and what we really focus on. And they really do act as an indicator species to help us understand what is going on in the environment. For climate change, for instance, their sex is dependent on the temperature of the incubation in the sand that their eggs are incubated in. And so with changing climate temperatures, it changes the beach temperatures, which can then affect the number of males and females that are produced, and that will have possibly have long-term effects on sea turtle populations for an extended period.
So you have brothers in arms, so to speak, Loggerhead Marine Life Center down the road from you. So you're in Jensen, they're south in Jupiter. And, one of the things I've been fortunate to learn is there's a lot to the technology and the science behind what what you are all doing and what you're doing over at InWater. One of my questions is are you also seeing a rise in tumors, for instance, as they are in the turtles?
Yeah, so that is one of the things that we study actually right now with Dr. Justin Peralt and his whole entire staff down there at the Marine Life Center. We're actually going to be in the field with him later this week studying that exact thing. Sea turtles have this disease, primarily green turtles, but all sea turtles can get it. It's a disease called fibropapillomatosis, or FP for short, and it causes these tumors to grow primarily on the soft tissue, but they can also be internal or on the shell, that can be extremely debilitating for the animals. Now, the virus that's associated with these tumors has been around as long as sea turtles have been, but we're seeing that turtles that are immune suppressed and living in degraded water have a higher occurrence of this disease. Mm. And so one of the things that we're looking at is why green turtles who live in coastal waters have higher prevalences of the disease over an extended period of time versus some of the other species that may also be in the same waters, or even green turtles that live in areas where the water appears to be clean and seems like it's pristine habitat, but those areas we're still seeing these high levels of the disease. So there's still a lot we don't know about fibropapillomatosis. We're trying to figure that out, but we definitely are concerned because these animals are immune suppressed. Right.
It doesn't sound much different than the human experience and the increase in, for a while it was, there's not more cancer, it's just that we're detecting it sooner, and now it's definitely, there's more cancer, So we're looking at environment in this micro way through the turtles, but we're not very far from the increase in disease and the awareness of these sort of shifts in, like you said, viruses that have been with us for a while, and or immune suppressing type shifts in populations that are increasing these diseases. So when you look at the research that's coming out of this, is a lot of it being applied to the human health system and how we're also possibly down the road going to be affected by climate change, or is it strictly reserved for marine life?
Well, so we haven't applied too much directly and transferred it over to human health, but there are things that are correlated, right? Because the same waters that these animals are swimming in, the same fish that they may be eating, the same crabs, the same other animals that we're harvesting, they're eating too. And so if we're seeing this disease with these animals that maybe are exposed to these stressors or these pollutants at a higher level, there's a good chance that we humans could also be affected by those same pollutants.
Right, and that's a little bit of science, a little bit of common sense there.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of what you do?
I have to say that I do enjoy getting out on the water a lot and just interacting with the animals. It's, I think, an honor to be able to work with a endangered species so closely in a variety of areas, whether that's on a nesting beach looking at adults and hatchlings, or actually being on the water and going out and working to capture these animals so that we can get up close to them and collect some data and really understand them better, because they spend 99% of their time out in the ocean. The male turtles rarely ever come back, and so it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of money to go out into where these turtles spend most of their life to really truly understand what they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
You, with InWater, all the research that you do is not just positioned right in Jensen where you're located, but throughout the state of Florida all the way to the Keys, correct?
Correct. So we have study sites all over Florida. We've worked outside of Florida. We spent a lot of time, I guess it's already been a while back now, but the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill we spent a lot of time responding to that in the Gulf of Mexico. But we have sites that we're studying turtles down in the Keys, the whole way through from Key West up to Key Largo. We have sites in Lake Worth Lagoon, Boca Raton, and then also over in the Big Bend region on Florida's west coast, so around Crystal River, in that area as well.
What was your function when you were working with the BP oil spill?
So when we were doing the BP oil spill, one of our initial jobs was the response and rescue, going out and finding small young turtles about the size of the palm of your hand out offshore 40, 50 miles into the ocean, where they inhabit that time out in these seaweed sargassum weed lines, and seeing how many of them were affected by the oil, and then capturing any of the oiled ones and bringing them to a rehab facility for care. And then after that portion, we were part of the natural resource damage assessment. So that means going out and trying to understand how many turtles are out in the Gulf of Mexico, where they are, what they're doing, and then taking that information and overlaying the areas where the oil was, so that the government agencies could determine the overall impact on these protected species and figure out what sorts of payments and fines and things had to be implemented so that they could restore these habitats.
It sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, we were one small part of it. There were a lot of biologists and scientists from all over the United States working on that together to try to piece all those parts together to come up with that one big number and figure out how to fix out what happened.
Wow. And hopefully try to help it never happen again.
Exactly. And so
I would say I would make sure, but I know that's impossible, unfortunately.
Yeah, we learned a lot. That's the one good thing about this whole project, is it did put a lot of energy and time and money into understanding where these animals are that might not have happened otherwise. So hopefully if something does happen in the future, we'll have a better start to understanding the impact on sea turtles.
So one of the things I'm wondering too, as you observe the sea turtle, we talked about the tumors which have increased, but what about malnourishment? And what they feed on? Has there been a shift on that?
So there has been some work on what they're feeding on, and it depends on the species. But one thing you're seeing in a lot of hatchlings and post-hatchlings, so basically as the turtles, they come out of the nest on the beach and they go out into the open ocean, and they spend a lot of time out in the Florida current and the Gulf Stream, kind of floating around the North Atlantic. They're living in this habitat as this floating sargassum seaweed at the surface. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of associated with it, and they're looking for little things to eat in there, little crabs and shrimps and such. But with that seaweed is also associated a lot of human debris and that are breaking down into smaller and smaller pieces. So if you're a young sea turtle, you most likely don't know the difference between a piece of plastic and a shrimp, and little turtles are notorious for just eating anything that gets in front of them anyway. So they're ingesting a lot of plastic, which takes up room for the nutrient-rich food they're supposed to be eating, and we're finding that most hatchlings that strand have a bunch of plastic in their stomach. The issues with larger turtles as they come back into the near shore seagrass beds and coral reefs in those areas as they get older is a little harder, because there's these decadal-long changes in ocean currents and ocean temperatures that can also affect prey that are available. So sometimes it's hard to tease out the difference between what's a natural fluctuation that may be affecting the population and what is a human impact.
For such a long time, the Keys were, no matter where you went throughout Florida, you could always count on the Keys to be pristine places where fish thrive, coral reefs thrive, that sort of thing. In your research down there, have you seen a shift?
So we have seen some changes. I can speak for the green turtles that we study down there. That one of the major impacts is just because there are so many people in that area. We do see the rehab facility down there, the Hidden Harbor Sea Turtle Hospital, that's been there for decades. They're seeing a lot of boat strikes because there's just a lot more people with boats that are hanging out in the Keys right now because it is such a popular place. But one of the good things we are also seeing in areas is that there are green turtles coming back to seagrass beds and areas offshore in what appear to be higher numbers. We don't have the surveys because nobody knew they were there before. But we seem to see a lot more green turtles throughout the Keys. So that's really positive. Green turtles were the species that was hunted almost to extinction in Florida over 100 years ago for food. That was one that was canned and made into turtle soup and shipped up north. So now that there have been protections in place for 50, 60 years, we're starting to see their numbers finally start to increase in the Keys. So we don't know how far that's going to go, but it's definitely a positive sign.
I was just speaking to a patient that lived in the Bahamas that also there was a very big popular food there.
Yeah, and it was a really big thing in Florida. It was a great source of protein. We find that a lot of the places that we actually study sea turtles are where there once were active fisheries historically for those turtles in the state of Florida. Our site over on the west coast in Crystal River is really close to Cedar Key, which was the last active fishery in the state of Florida. And, it makes sense, right? We're studying turtles where they're most common, and that's the same place that the fishers would have looked for them 100 years ago as well.
Right. Having this conversation with you takes me back to when things were shut down with, the whole COVID, concerns and different, things happened where for a while we couldn't even go on the water in some places. So there was a lot of growth, and there was almost like this instantaneous, like nature just started to take a breath again because humans weren't all over the place, like you said, with their boats and this and that and whatever we do. And then obviously things took a full swing again, and everybody's out, and we're, leaving trash everywhere and, polluting the place. And so, we can do damage. We know this. It's very clear in how much damage we do to our planet. What can we do to help based upon what you're doing with education with the kids, adults? What are some simple things that we can start doing, in your opinion, going forward? Because we hear a lot on the news, we hear a lot on different shows and so forth and so on. But what is real, based upon what you're seeing out there and what really works?
Yeah, so those are great. A lot of the problems we have, they're just not simple fixes. Obviously, climate change is something that affects the entire world, and I think we have a lot of solutions to help fix that. Just minimizing the amount of CO2 and other gases that are being put into the environment, into the air, and so that's one of the big things to try to keep, the temperatures of this planet down and try to minimize that climate change and how that affects turtles. One of the big things that we talk to our public about when we're doing education is the importance of minimizing single-use plastics. So things that you use once and just throw away, and trying to use either reusable plastics or other containers. And one of the big things that we teach our students is instead of using just a plastic water bottle that you throw away or even recycle, we're using maybe a metal water bottle that you can use for years, and then if it ever breaks, you can more easily recycle that. We're finding that recycling isn't the solution that we once thought it was. Not as many of our plastics are getting recycled. They're either just getting thrown in the landfill or burned. And so trying to minimize just those single-use items and go to things that are more sustainable, that we can use repeatedly is one of the big things we try to teach. And this isn't just an issue for, people that are concerned about sea turtles. This is something that every person who is on this planet that wants to pass it down to future generations should be thinking about in the future.
I love that I'm seeing more of that sort of contribution by people to have reusable water bottles. And I'm also happy about the straws, because for a while the straws was a big push to help save turtles and fish, because the straws were, part of the issue, especially where turtles were concerned. And so now you have biodegradable and bamboo and metal and all these different choices. I think one of the things that I love seeing is the beach cleanups, especially after a storm, which kicks up all that plastic that, people have dumped over their boats for whatever reason, or sometimes it just flies off because they neglect to batten down the hatches, so to speak.
So one of the things I think is kind of a common misconception is most of the plastic that we find on the beach and debris is coming from the ocean, and people throwing it away on the ocean, and maybe giant cruise ships or something like that. But 80% of that debris is coming from land. And so that is things that people have thrown away or tossed out the window or what have you, and has found its way into a drain and made its way, through maybe some fresh water and then down into the ocean, where it's washed back in. So that's one of the things that we try to tell people, that it's not just the people who live on the beach or go out boating that can make a difference. It's people that are living in Kansas, that are, living in the middle of the United States or wherever. Their actions have consequences, and they can make an impact on, animals and habitats thousands of miles away from where they live.
Yeah. The other thing too is, one of the things I love doing with my children, and I recommend, and that I do myself, is if you go on obviously we're talking coastal here, not middle of the country, but same with parks and wherever you are in the middle of the country, whatever's in your path. If you have a little, bag you can take with your sack when you do these nature walks or you're in natural habitats, and whatever's in your path, if you can pick up a few pieces of plastic, that's a few pieces of plastic less that's out there in nature. And I think other people will see that and be less likely to discard things or leave things that shouldn't be in nature, that's man-made and will not biodegrade. So we do that as a family, and it's one of many things that I feel like I will see passed down, because it's just so second nature at this point. They've been doing it since they were babies,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's wonderful. And that's part of it too, is, having that understanding and being out in nature and seeing the effects of trash or debris or pollution, and just being able to connect in whatever that way is with as you as a person or you as your family, to just get out, whether it's a park or a forest or the beach, to just make that connection and understand firsthand, again, how a person in your community's actions can affect the world around you.
Absolutely. No, it's huge, because when you spend more time in nature, you're more likely to protect it. Hence all of the work from the anglers associations, all the fishermen out there, I think do great. I think hunters do a lot of work, out there in nature, especially in the middle of the country where there's more, hunting of game versus the coastal, which is more hunting of fish, but those people actually do a lot, when they're for the community of nature, I would say, and wherever they live, and protecting it, because they're out there enjoying it, and they make their living from it, and a lot of it's just spending pastime with your kids. My kids grew up fishing, the same thing, so we have a lot of respect for the ocean, the water, and how it affects us. I love what you're doing. I love the education process, and I think that people should know more about how to get involved and keep in touch with what you're offering and where. Can you share some of that information of how people can connect and maybe contribute?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is InWater, INWATER.org, and we have all of our education initiatives are there. Again, we have things ranging from online curricula that anybody can download, any teachers anywhere they're at, to we have a network of educational materials that are available to different school districts throughout the southeastern United States, and how to get access to those if you're especially a school teacher, and see if those are available to you. We have different educational initiatives for the general public where we can come and do outreach or talk to your organization. And so all of that is available through our website. And we also have a list of descriptions of all the different research projects that we're currently working on. And then, of course, we have a nice little online store that shows some of the different gear and sea turtle stickers and things like that help support our mission. If you're on social media, we are on Facebook and Instagram as well. And so we're always posting whatever the most recent highlight is that we've seen either out in the field or a turtle that we've recaptured from years beforehand. So those interesting stories are always there, along with all of the educational impacts that we're highlighting both here in Florida, and actually we have some international initiatives that have really taken off in the last year or so. So we're partnering with groups in South America and Southeast Asia right now to spread that awareness and education in a way that their local communities understand as well.
That's wonderful. Well, we need you. Thank you for all you do. And that's Senior Scientist at InWater Research, Cody Mott. Thank you for joining us today and for sharing all of this amazing work. And again, it's InWater.org for most of this information. If you've missed any part of this show, it's available via podcast, and I would urge you to hear all bits and pieces of it, because it's a really wonderful show. And thank you for keeping us in your universe. Vel is one of our helpers here to bring us to you. Download Vel Health today, velhealth.com, for wellness within reach. And we will see you next time. Thank you again, Mr. Mott.
Thank you, Dr. Ken. I appreciate it.